Good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome back. I'll be on in a minute as soon as I run out of excuses. We're going to play one more song, and we will be right back live. Play two. I think they put me in a mood to do this. That's why I do that. Yeah. So let's shut it off. Thank you. And get started. Let's see. First, let's put me on the screen. Where am I? There I am. Here I am. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're enjoying your holiday break. And welcome back to the holiday Blabathon, where I get some of this stuff off my chest. I'm going 7 days not in a row, 7 days over the holiday. And this is day 4. And you can read the description to see what this is about. You'll probably be reading it in the future at some point. But I will start by saying some of the ad-libs today will involve, because you've heard this before, right? I'm just adding a little here and there and embellishing. Today I'm going to be probably embellishing somewhat on terahertz waveguides, terahertz waves, terahertz this, terahertz that. So that's just a little preview for you. And where are we? Today we are on, let's take one more look at this. Yes, there we are. I like that. Anyway, so let's just start and dive right into it, since I don't know, I'm out of ad-libberies. Let's get into it. Hello, everyone. I am Brian Kelly, a retired engineer and attorney with a background in design, construction, startup, and testing within, as well as legal issues within the energy, engineering, and construction industries. I also worked in surety and fidelity bonding, including white-collar matters similar to the Bernie Madoff case, like the one I had with Jeffrey Epstein's mentor. That was fun. In addition to construction cases. we got on the New York Legal Journal front page for beating these people at large financial institutions like Citigroup and AIG. The details of my background, construction trailers to Wall Street, can be found on the links page I just put in the chat, along with a link to the page I am reading from right now. The subject today, having little to do with that background, well, some. The subject today is called a light pumping for an anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction effect. This is a concept of mine that is about 10 years old now. I am giving you a bare bones introduction today because, as you can see from the links page, I've got a lot to say and many different ways to say it. So this is just a brief and concise overview. You can read the detailed links and watch the videos posted there at your convenience. Now to the overall concept and general principles. Most importantly, I start with the assumption that light, the full spectrum, is the best medium for us to use to cause an anti-gravity inertial mass reduction effect at this point, and not space-time. Light is in space-time, but it is not space-time itself. I am not dealing with space-time, the vacuum, quantum foam, warping space, or anything like that. The relevant medium for this concept is also not air, and it is not water, and it is not even space itself, which is mostly just filled with light, but of course has other things in it. The way I see it, air, water, and space are not things that have light within them so much as they are things that are within light. So, light only, and by that I mean the full spectrum, is the medium here. Secondly, and very simply put, to achieve an anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction effect within this medium, we will mimic the phases of matter, which are in turn caused by energy levels, which are in turn caused by light. So we can use light to move through light by pulling it through the skins and bodies of a massive object, which will simultaneously cause the desired anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction effects. There's much more to it, of course, but again, this is a bare bones overview. So I can start with this falsifiable statement. One of the first things I dared to post on Twitter back in 2016, quote, "Light pumped through matter reduces the effect of gravity," unquote. That still holds true today, of course, as contradiction of that statement would effectively amount to nullifying the phases of matter, which may be possible as there is sometimes the eyeball exception, but I've never heard of that exception. We can't put forth such a general rule because we know that the phases of matter are caused by their energy levels. That is, light moving in, through, out, and around, commonly referred to as absorbed and emitted. I added around to those concepts as an object or craft encased in a bubble of slippery light is going to provide us with mitigated friction drag and inertia in addition to the anti-gravity effect. We will be within things like air, water, and space, but always slightly separated and not interacting directly. This bubble notion is not unlike the warp drive bubble concepts, as some of you may have already surmised. These light bubbles can then be intensified, diminished, and shaped to facilitate relative motion with respect to other objects. So we will simply mimic the as yet unfalsified natural phenomenon described as the phases of matter. That phenomenon also generally describes what buoyancy is and the lift of gases. Solids and liquids typically don't lift, despite being comprised of the very same atoms and molecules, but gases do, because of the light pumping in, through, out, and around the molecules and atoms. We will simply harness and scale this well understood effect. Waveguides and the like can also be made to cause the same outcome, with the desired anti-gravity light floating and inertial mass reduction effects. And that includes terahertz, doesn't it? That's a big chunk. So why is anyone surprised that a thing that floats through space would float through space? We all see this phenomenon constantly, but for the most part, don't appreciate it. It is easily observable in natural archetypes, such as when observing the differences between water ice, liquid water, and water clouds, as well as with man-made airships and balloons, and probably to a lesser extent with butterflies, insects, and birds. Some of them have waveguides built right in. A slightly more speculative sidetrack that I am avoiding today, because I am only addressing the bare bones. To keep it short, sweet, and hopefully effective, I am sticking to the mostly indisputable today. To debunk what I am suggesting here will take you straight back to the phases of matter themselves and how energy levels work, as well as things like basic buoyancy. Then one would have to explain away how the archetypes mentioned above exist somehow, in spite of the effect of energy levels, which are in turn caused by light. Then they would have to explain why these archetypes cannot be mimicked and improved upon drastically, especially given modern material sciences and optomechanical knowledge, because that is precisely what I am now proposing. It took me a while to do it, but the arguments for this concept are now pretty much bulletproof, and new methods to improve upon these natural processes are flowing out of the science and engineering community every single day. Buoyancy, lift, and the phases of matter are material properties that human beings can certainly improve upon and optimize. There is absolutely no reason why they cannot be utilized more effectively and improved upon drastically. Yet this seemingly obvious endeavor has not been undertaken. This unfortunate state of things is also why the concept and the general principles I present to you today are not patentable or otherwise able to be monopolized. They belong to everybody. But what is done is one thing, and how it is done is quite another. I did take that patent law course. So what I am saying is, but that'll be a fun game. So what I am saying is that the open source anti-gravity inertial mass reduction process is right in your face, isn't it? It is not 0-point energy. No, that's warp drive. That's far more exotic and ambitious. But it is free energy, okay? Free, and we can manipulate it easily enough. So I propose that we take this free energy, which is free, did I mention that? And perfect the light and matter interaction in order to bend it to our will, as was done with fire and the motive power of heat in general, and which we can now extend to the entire spectrum. It is time to move beyond that narrow band of infrared upon which we so heavily rely, you thrust monkeys. That is what science and engineering are for. This is how human beings progress. So, this is where the metamaterials come in. For example, the lift of the random hydrogen gas molecules in, say, the Hindenburg, every single one functioning haphazardly and working against each other, could be ordered and purposed and vectored right down to the angstrom level. That's the atom itself. That is, optimized with metamaterials, molecular and atomic approaches, aerogels, waveguides, photonic crystals, topological insulators, plasmonics, quasi-crystals, sub-wavelength waveguides, and maybe even some mythological, magical isotope tweaking will all likely work. But these metamaterial design and fabrication efforts, listen up, you AI efforts, But these metamaterial design and fabrication efforts must be working toward a feasible, intelligible, indisputable, unfalsified general principle. That's what an AI can't come up with. And light pumping is indeed such a principle. If we also happen to bend space-time or warp the vacuum, this ain't it. By accident, along the way to this idiot-proof sure thing, then so be it. Stranger things have happened. Pardon me. But in the meantime, we are going to use those metamaterials and waveguides to capture and transfer the explosive momentum of ambient mass equivalent light. You can call it a continuous radiation pressure, or even thrust from reloadable fuel if you must. Until you get comfortable with the idea. But just keep on thinking about those angstrom-sized atoms, or sub-wavelength waveguides capturing and exploding photons thousands of times larger than they are, in the nanometers, and how fast they can be made to do so. Also, internalize and understand the fact that the very medium you will be pumping through, okay? Is also a highly efficient propellant when used correctly. You just pull it through. Did you hear me back there, Skunkworks? Or shall I repeat that and yell louder? Anyway, this is how you do propellantless. At least for the time being. We are talking about angstrom-sized nanopumps and picometer waveguide systems that are hardwired by nature to run and keep running at attosecond. Where have we heard that lately? Light speeds and higher. That's 18 zeros per second every second since the Big Bang. It is not quite perpetual motion, but those numbers will work out fine for most of us. Per square inch, those angstroms are in the quadrillions by area, in the quintillions by volume, or thereabouts. That is 15 more zeros by area, working with those 18 zero attoseconds in an already lighter than air metamaterial, such as graphene, which is simply hydrogenated graphene, which is simply graphene soaked in hydrogen. These materials can fuse those nanopumps into a solid chunk of a skin, comprised of automatically refueling nanorockets in the octillions. What's that, 18 zeros? I don't know. All acting as one. This kind of design will start to approach optimal energy densities, which will then be compounded with femtosecond and attosecond timescales to produce paradigm shifting efficiency. Things like that will give you radiant flux per mass density in abundance, petajoules and zettawatts, and are becoming achievable here and now. There are many, many, many ways to look at this concept, which is a good thing. Mostly all describing the same thing. From Newton and forces, to Einstein's description of the mass equivalence of light, to floating iridescent hummingbirds, to tales of the UAPs themselves, allegedly. That is why there is a link to the links above, and why this presentation has to be short and sweet and packed with things like falsifiable but unfalsified statements. indisputable statements, and mind-numbingly large, small, and fast numbers until people get the general idea of what I am talking about. That's why it's new and novel, see? Then we can get into all the subtleties, which certainly do exist. Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Maybe, yes, I don't know, I forgot half of it. But are not dispositive of the overall undeniable efficacy here. That's why I write it down. So basically, I am all but telling you the way it is. You want to argue, anybody? Not suggesting it. Nature is what it is. I'm looking right at it. That's the way it is, and it has been here the whole time. Thus, science is already there, going back to at least the Greeks anyway, and almost certainly further. The math seems to be lagging right now, though, just as it was for the Montgolfier brothers, the Wright brothers, and the early Chinese rocket scientists. As with them, the equations will have to play catch up here, as usual. Sometimes we lose sight of the fact that physical concepts and ideas exist independently of the many eccentric ways to explain them. Like it has to work in the real world. Not just paper. You aren't going to take a mathematical concept, reach out and grab it and warp it. It's got to be a thing. A physical thing. That said, I can't say that enough. And I'm getting tired of it. I will go on to suggest that equations around supercavitating bubbles and fluids with invariable gravitational fields might be one way to describe this. That's the SCU getting started. But it's using Earth's gravity and it's using fluids and so forth. Not light. Not light in fluids, not in a variable gravitational field. Which might try it mathematically. It's beyond me. Or it might be done with the optomechanical force studies for light-matter interactions in a gravitational field. But right now, there is not even a consensus on photon mass for thrust, despite photons being the drivers of most of it. I almost got distracted there. I did get distracted, didn't I? The drivers of most of it. That's why. It's a long sentence. Or barely even the notion of fields of light in air or water where the force of gravity within is diminished that I have ever seen. Nor have I ever seen a model for a point of mass deterministically controlling its own light bubble in a gravitational field, like this guy here from Planet X in a Tic Tac. Perhaps something like that exists. Or should exist for supercavitating hypersonics and submarines, my national security friends. But I doubt it. Is such a region of curved space less curved in that instance? You mathematicians might care. I really don't right now. Are the tensors and cones any different under such conditions? Interesting, but is it gonna lift anything? Okay? Are the gravitons no longer as coherently aligned? I happen to think so, but that is inconsequential because I don't think anyone has ever thought about some of these things mathematically yet. Why would they? They should. But again, right now, as far as I am concerned, that is their problem, not ours. Chinese spy balloons, balloon-like cylinders? Why the mystery? I thought it was something was shot over Lake Huron. I just heard about it yesterday. New form of propulsion discovered. Huh? What? I didn't say that. Why would that? I don't know why this scenario isn't on paper and barely care right now. I am here to float away at will. True. You guys can argue about the tensors and cones and shoot off at the speed of light in my own cozy little light bubble. Like this guy in the little picture there. Sitting in his lazy boy with his remote control. Using the absolutely obvious characteristics of nature. Okay? How that is done later is of second. How that's documented late. Oh boy. How that is documented later is of secondary importance. But despite my apparent hubris, I will be glad to help with the bookkeeping. I just gave you your book titles and chapters. You can do the real math. Please just spell my name correctly with a Y. Footnote 1. I would also like to ask somebody more mathematically proficient than myself to explain how the mass of a light entangling, and by entangling I mean in the plain meaning of the word, not the spooky action with Alice and Bob sense, how the mass of a light entangling object over time losing its mass equivalence at a rate greater than local gravitational field's acceleration requires may be likened to a snapshot of negative mass. Who am I? I would think there might be some math already done out there by now, but I tend to doubt it. Or perhaps we can update the rocket equation. Oh, boy, does that ever need it. Make it continuous. We went over this yesterday. Put the rocket in a mitigated gravitational field of its own making and wrap a slippery light bubble around it to reduce drag, friction, and inertial mass. How do we rewrite F equals ma for a body in motion when a major component of that body is not mass, but mass equivalence? The thing with this is, this concept can be described 6 ways to Sunday and back, but apparently since that hasn't been done conclusively to date. I have to shout about it and wave my hand. This novel concept, which is simply mimicking what already exists in nature, true, we'll have to bring that about. Pardon me. So yes, the current lack of a comprehensive mathematical descriptions is a weakness here. Oh, weakness. But that is not an obstacle, merely a historical footnote, because the phases stand unfalsified right out your window, and archetypes exist right out your window. The notion of optimization, which would involve the engineering of metamaterials in this case, has proven worthwhile over and over and over again throughout history, and this concept is fresh, fertile ground, isn't it? You can see all of this with your own eyes, whether you appreciate it yet or not. I suggest you do. That the math is once again lagging innovation is merely a secondary concern, and often does, not always, but often. Fortunately, that gives other people something to do. One upside to this weakness is, although this concept has yet to be described mathematically to everyone's satisfaction, including my own, it is also impossible to debunk mathematically. Because nature is what it is, no matter what has or has not been written or published about it. If you don't believe me, go to the nearest swimming pool Take a football and try to hold it down to the 8-foot level, and then tell me I'm wrong. Okay? Not going to happen. Write an equation about it. Please. For all of us. And while sufficient archetypes already exist, as I've mentioned, this concept is indeed testable as well. I started experimenting with balloons and mirrors early on and did it for years. But for this crowd, a basic metamaterial might be necessary, starting with perhaps a homemade street corner bootleg graphene or equivalent. Think of it this way. All you will be doing is taking something lighter than air, like graphene, and making it even lighter than air. And then you make it even lighter by adjusting the light and improving upon the speeds of light coming in and the chirality and all that stuff. By adding hydrogen to it for a hydrogenated graphene. That's like step 1 or something, step 0, known as graphene. Then you gradually learn to control its inertia mitigating anti-gravity properties. You dope it to turn left. You decorate it to turn right. Whatever it takes, then you start building around it. Instead of a mirror deterministically reflecting the sun onto a balloon, is that science? I think it is. I'll tell that story later. Maybe Mark Sokol chasing a piece of street graphene through the back alleys of North Jersey with Jeremiah's magic wand might be the stunt that finally opens the world's eyes. Or it might be Wayne Ojala and his experiments as featured here, fail forward research. Or it might be Korea UFO on Twitter, _ between those. His name is Joshua Bertrand, and he's into the aerogels, and he's seeing and saying how these balloon-like things we're not hearing about anymore could very well be, yes, it is advanced. Yes, it is. It's kind of a new form of propulsion. It's a gradation, you see? It's a gradation. And there's 2 different ways to look at the gradation. Well, I'll just shout out a little bit here. You have the vacuum balloon, envisioned in 1670 by the Jesuit Italian named Lana or De Lana or something. Then you have a gas balloon envisioned by other Jesuits, I believe. Then you have the hot air balloon, which came into reality when a couple of guys with no PhDs in France were doing mom's laundry and kept noticing how the sheets billow up. Okay? You're not going to make anything out of that, said the neighbors. I just made that up. You clowns. And then a couple years later, they're in front of the palace with the king and the whole everybody, Ben Franklin and everyone else. Those are hot air balloons. Then you have airships. Then you have, well, hybrid airships. Then you put a propeller on it. Then you build up, and up. Now we're in the aerogel age. Follow me on Twitter. Look at my old video on aerographene. 1 pound lifts an elephant. Don't take my word for it. I'm just a fool on YouTube. That's completely backed up and came out of Germany with German scientists, and there's literature, and find that, the video. Find my video. And then what happened? Oh, then people envision metamaterials like this, and they find them, and they wonder why they're waveguides that float in cold temperatures. There's a reason for it. Because they're supposed to. Because if it fell off a spaceship, it makes perfect sense. That's why. Okay? Now, we can do this. And you start out basically, like I'm suggesting here with graphene. Or some, if you can think of a better way, borafine, helium, whatever. Aerogel's a good start. That count. Is that a metamaterial? Because the air is trapped. You can either absorb it or adsorb it. Adsorb's trapped. When it's stuck on the thing, like graphene, then you can say, hey, that's a metamaterial. That's an anti-gravity metamaterial. I'm saying it. Where am I? That's your first one. And then you build up the waveguides, and then you got your photonic crystals in there to guide the wave. You keep building. Then you gradually learn to control its inertia. Pardon me, swallowed my own hot air. Then you gradually learn to control its inertia mitigating anti-gravity properties. Oh, we did that part. Then you start building. We did that part. Or as I suggested to certain well-known TTSA members repeatedly on Twitter years ago, this is that waveguide. Check the videos on that. There's at least 2 on here on my channel called Terahertz this, Terahertz that. And then there's, no, that isn't a video. Put the material in a chamber. You say you found a waveguide? Put the material in a chamber. On Twitter years ago, take it over to Bigelow. He's got a cold chamber to test his gizmo hotels. Probably. Or rent the one from the Army and not the Army, the NASA. You're all tight buddies, aren't you? Get in there. Slip the guy a couple of bucks. Pardon me. They were talking about that last night on YouTube. And, anyway, where are we? Put the material in a chamber and just fiddle around with the different electromagnetic fields. The electric field. See if you have a piece of graphene or a piece of bismuth magnesium metamaterial you found somewhere. You put it in one of these chambers that the scientists have. And it's like, okay, zap it. Zap it with this, zap it with that. Some of the zaps will go through the thing and float it. Some of them will activate the material to make it change a little bit. So it's, your temperature, it'll float in different temperatures. In other words, you adjust it. It's like a gas pedal in your car, right? Now, you might do that electrically or magnetically. You could do that eventually photonically. There you do that. Bits and pieces of that are coming up. Especially you could do it with graphene that way, quickly, easily. And that's what some of these aerogels are doing when they explode. Anyway, I was yelling about the different the electromagnetic field. That's light. Electric is one, magnetic's another. This is tough for beginners. It's confusing. Electromagnetic is another. It's just a naming. I talked about that yesterday. A naming convention. So these light fields include temperatures, such as the cold temperatures of space that are terahertz. All temperatures from zero, absolute-ish, zero, minus 459, the temperature of space, where it's interstellar, all the way up to 300 plus 334, where it gets hot near suns and stars and things. So you're going to want to guide those temperatures. You're riding on the temperatures. You're surfing them. You're pulling them through. You're pulling them in and exploding them out the back, thrust monkeys. That's all it is. It's too easy. But it's hard to build, probably, at first. But once you get the idea of it, your cars start weighing less. Your grocery bill goes down. Crybabies about the climate. Go away. Go away. Temperatures, visible light. Microwaves, X-rays, radio waves, sound, or whatever frequencies you have handy to see what affects and controls it. Put it in the thing, flash the lights on and off, Change the temperatures, shoot an X-ray, whatever you have. You NASA guys, you have it all in those temperatures, in those things. And it'll go right down to the coldness of space. And if you put it in one of those and fiddle with the temperature knob, that bismuth, whatchamacallit, that's gonna hang there. Okay, it's just gonna hang there until you shut the thing off. Same with a graphene, except it'll be a different condition. It'll hang there in a warmer thing and with visible light, okay, because it's got hydrogen on it. But bismuth thinks visible light is like, cold terahertz to bismuth is like light and heat to hydrogen, and we know that floats like a balloon, float away. You want to do that, right? Or do you want to sit around trying to warp space? I mean, good luck. I think it will work someday, but right now, ultimately, we will build around these malleable material properties of lift and buoyancy, which are caused by light, and optimize them until we are pumping light in a rate approaching the speed of light. It may seem very silly and funny for a while with the magic wand, like it was for me in the balloons, but ultimately, this cannot not work. I'll say that again. This time for Raytheon and the DOE in the back. Wake up. Put that donut down. Ultimately, this cannot not work. At some point, it is just simple common sense. But I realize and acknowledge that a few performative hoops, like this one, may be desirable here, but no, and some of these videos show things but no, it is not as awe-inspiring as warp drive, but bulletproof and idiot-proof will just have to do for now, okay? Best I can do for ya. So, take a quick look later at what I call the Philly Flyer, linked right here on the page for an idea of what that might look like at first. And the other stuff I was showing on the intro and outro. Maybe before we get the magic wand out. That was the first thing I visualized, him and the magic wand, and that was the early days of APEC. I don't know if I shouted them out. That's a given. Oh yeah, this was written for them originally. But we can talk about all that stuff later. This is a bare bones overview, and it's not intended to be a deep dive into waveguide and metamaterial technology. Okay, getting away from the prototypes. Ooh, UFOs. UFO fans, this is you. Getting away from the prototypes and back to the archetypes. I would expound for just a moment on the UAPs and UFOs themselves. I have personally never seen one. You may have, but we have all heard the stories, and people familiar to us all claim to have seen the compelling data. It's compelling data. And they love that word. Yeah, it's a good word. I tend to generally believe these accounts. Why? Because they describe multi-spectral signatures and light-pumping behavior. That is precisely as I would expect them to be. To me, the 5 observables should be called the 5 utterly predictables. I have a webpage on precisely that topic, in fact, but since we are bare bones here today, and that is a huge distraction, I will say nothing further about it now. You can find that link later and read it to see why I occasionally cannot help but scoff at Arrow, and ATIP, scoff, and TTSA, scoff, and all the infotainment limited hangouts, slow roller types. We know you can't say it, but we're not really mad. But wouldn't hurt if you did. So, slow roller types, we know who you are, okay? The UAPs are, in all likelihood, Some people love that word too, don't they? Pumping the full spectrum of light within a medium of light. Just like a Virginia-class submarine pumps water, but doing so far more efficiently. The whole skin, every molecule on that skin of a submarine pumping water, okay? It wouldn't be every molecule. Well, it could be. Yeah, it could be, yeah. But that's only good in water. And water has plenty of light, doesn't it? And temperature, doesn't it? And so do these other kinds of atmospheres. But you're encased in a nice, slippery light bubble, so you don't care. I don't expect anybody listening right now to buy that line wholesale. No wonder I repeat myself. Except the ones that already do but won't say so. But at some point I predict that all of you will see this stuff could not be more obvious. Pardon me. As for inertia, inertia means very little when your craft's surfaces are not directly touching atmospheres, be they gaseous or liquid, but are instead encased in a nice, slippery light bubble. You're too slippery to touch light. You know how your foot slips on the ice? That's how this thing is to air, water, other kind of goofy atmospheres. Slips right through there. An air molecule and stuff in the air. I have a video on that too. And that'll it won't touch it. It's too slippery. It's the same thing, and easy to understand. It's too slippery. Where am I? Directly touching atmosphere. There is a bit more to it, in my opinion, which is why it works in space, where everything's slippery light. But you can still improve upon that aspect of it. You still want a bubble in case you run into a floating Tesla. But that gets into spin 2 gravitons and why spin 1 photons cut right through them. It has to do with the shapes of the thing. It's a difference between... Here's what it is. I'm glad I remembered this. I guess the pool ball made me think of it. Pool football. Because when you're in the pool and you're doggy paddling, you're not going anywhere, are you? You're staying in place. That's your analog to mass. Because mass has all these extra, you can call them quarks, you can call them trapped photons, whatever you want to call it. And they get entangled up with the spin 2 gravitons. But a photon is stripped down. It's half of an electron, isn't it? It's only 720 degrees. You've all seen that. A lot of you have seen that photon GIF. I should put that on the thing. That's 720 degrees in one round thing. As compared to something like, it's a... What it is the difference between doggy paddling and using all 4 limbs to do the Australian crawl, okay? It's the same motion. The motion of in place or the motion of going somewhere. Now you're going to have resistance from the water, okay? But you're cutting right through it. Like a spin 1 photon cuts right through them, which is the kind of thing I'm skipping in this bare bones overview. Similarly, a gravity means little to nothing to mass when the mass is losing mass equivalence at a rate greater than local gravitational field's acceleration requires. The thing is losing its own weight. Plus, quick and fast, compared to the gravitational field's acceleration. Because that's only going to be so big. And that's going to be determined by where you are. If you're on the face of the earth, this little balloon down here is escaping. It's only chained in this car. You'll see it in a moment. Because it's losing mass equivalence at a rate greater than the local gravitational field's acceleration requires. That's why it will go up if it's freed. All right? But it's losing its mass. That red plastic is losing the mass of the red plastic and the ribbon. It's losing the equivalence of that in light. How's that happening? Because the light in the gas in there, I presume it's helium, is pulling and pumping light in, through, out, and, to an extent around, which may be why it's cutting through that inertia right there. That's the whole point of Wacky Science Dad here. He's not wacky, he's zany. If you look carefully at that, you'll see that weight going backwards and the balloon going forward when the guy puts it in. Hey, ever drive with balloons in the car? Okay. Sure you have. Some of you have. Try it. Where was I? Oh, because that thing is losing, that's why it works. That is a heavier than air thing until you put, what do you call it in it? A light pumping material, which in this case is helium molecules. So we're going to take that and improve upon it. Because we will be in space. Back into character here. You would just aim the thing at the nearest star and start pulling light through the mass and pumping it back out at a rate approaching the speed of light. Pound the table. The craft will be pulling and pumping light in, through, out, and around while maintaining its own little protective and slippery bubble or cavity. Ask any alien. I got $10. Oops. I got $10. It says that's what most of these alleged UFOs and so-called unidentified anomalous phenomena are doing. But we will just have to wait until hell freezes over. Until they tell us. That'll be a while. No, it'll slip out. It'll slip out. Should we lie to the people about an aerogel and get caught? Of a primitive light pumper from China? Well, that's what you're paid for. Pardon me. That's got to be a tough decision, but I don't know. Sadly, you're not trusted. It may not be your fault personally, but you have big problems. Okay. So, the bottom line here. Okay, bottom liners from Wall Street. Someday you'll be listening in again. Hi, old gang. So the bottom line here is that this stuff is actually a simple and idiot-proof. It boils down to recognition of the need to optimize an analog of the phases of matter. I think I picked that up from what's his name? Billions and Billions. What's that guy's? Carl Sagan. Phases of matter. For a certain purpose. Oh, sorry, deers racing outside. For a certain purpose. Commonly called buoyancy, or perhaps now anti-gravity. Admit it. Human beings have been changing material properties since before the cave was invented, so why stop now? This milestone, anti-gravity and inertial mass reduction, is one that we have not yet fully addressed with even the most basic tools and easiest concepts at our disposal, but only with notions that, while ambitious, are not yet feasible. So let's just admit that much. Get over the embarrassment of letting the accomplishments of the Montgolfier brothers and their progenitors languish, and get on with it. I want to yell at this next line, but I'm not out of gas. I just don't feel like yelling. Building around the inertial and gravitational mitigation properties of the light-matter interaction is a natural step. It just got waylaid for a while in favor of force and thrust. Instead of using brute force explosions to overcome gravity, we will use the benefit of higher energy levels to free ourselves from gravity and inertia in a more subtle, elegant, and effective manner. This approach involves harnessing and using ambient energy in real time, and it's not unlike solar power in that respect. So it's friendly, like solar power. You're using the natural. I mean, you could frame this as the greenest thing ever. You got that? Ever. Green, clean, plenty of caffeine. And when you're at the angstrom level, it's not far in between. Whatever that means. This approach. Make no mistake, folks. Step right up, suckers. Make no mistake. This is the hard tech play of the century, waiting to happen, folks. If I do say so myself, and I do say it. And I won't even mention the green energy aspect of it because I shouldn't have to. Should I? I may sound a little underwhelmed about this sometimes, but I'm fully aware of those facts and just a little bit fatigued by them. Day 4, the Blabathon, the hump day is over, almost. The free energy is all around us. It's there when you look out your window. When you go to church, when you pay your taxes, in every photon right down to the visible light and temperature wherever you may be enjoying this unhinged rant. This free energy includes the entire terahertz spectrum. Here we go. By the way, which is another distraction I'll save for later, but all that is the temperature range. I'll read it slowly, right? All that is, this is terahertz, right? All that is the temperature range, temperature being ambient free energy, which we can use to capture the momentum and explode it out the back repeatedly, efficiently, and extreme energy density, quadrillions, octillions, whatever, found everywhere in the universe between negative 459 and positive 334 degrees Fahrenheit. And I have centigrade on my little graphic there, but I didn't put it in here. So, if you want anti-gravity, inertial mass reduction, and free energy, you want the free energy? Do you want the free... I can't hear you. You first realize that you are in fact sitting in it. I am here to tell you how to capture it and use it. Simple. To quote myself, if I may, quote, large numbers of little things doing little things quickly and repeatedly add up to very big things. Unquote. In this case, the underappreciated scales and numbers in nature are far more relevant to solving this problem than our equations, at least for right now. I'm looking at that terahertz picture, aren't I? And I forgot to go where I was going to go with that. Now, some of these usual suspects, the slow roller, deep state, they can only say so much, Sometimes you do a limited hangout, you go fishing, for crowdsourcing and stuff. And then you catch one, like you did with this, what do you call it? A terahertz waveguide, bismuth magnesium. I don't care what you make it out of. I don't care. As long as it's pulling those temperatures through there. Okay, the one layer adjusts. What temperature is it? I don't know, Mork. We're floating off the coast of Mercury, they call it around here. It's 334 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, adjust it to exactly 10 terahertz. But it's stuck down on 0.1 terahertz. That's the range, 0.1 to 10. So when he says terahertz, that means that's a lot. He didn't say how many terahertz, right? Even I didn't notice that for a while. I'm like, I'll just use one. But that limits the point I'm trying to make, doesn't it? Because one of those layers is adjusting how much terahertz is going through the bismuth. It's mainly bismuth. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see that occasionally I see these papers that I check every day. They come to me on Google alert search, whatever, multiple sources, and it'll tell you this stuff, terahertz goes through this stuff like water, like butter, if you will. That's what they're supposed to do. That's not warp drive, by the way. Probably. Unless we're all wrong about that aspect. And it really is a communication device. Yes, I heard that. Walk back. That just happens to float in space. Okay. All right. I think I made my point there. We're all doing our jobs here, right? Right. But that's going to slip out. And you can say you didn't see it with your own eyes, Mr. Tester guy. Usual suspect. But that means to us that you might have seen it on video, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Admit what you did. Anyway, you're doing your job. That's fine. We thank you for it, everybody. And we will be... we will be far more... All right. Now, enough of thanking you. Let's thank me. Because I am telling you that we will be using time as a tool here, okay? That's kind of a breakthrough, big picture thing. How do they think? How should we think? How did God think making this place? That's the bottom line where you start. Because it's going to be efficient. It's going to be function upon function upon function upon function. And ordered, isn't it? So we will be using... letting things just do what they do naturally at the very high speeds they do them at. When you set things up to do what they would be doing anyway, not to preach too much, but so that they are doing them optimally for a purpose, listen up, neckbeards. That is how words like propellantless and perpetual motion, heads explode. Leave the fiction and fantasy realm to become real life. It's not really perpetual, but you guys do not grasp that anyway. Not what it really means. There are zeros. Actually, there are zeros upon zeros of bulletproof, idiot-proof, octo-quadrillion, zepto-quintillions. Just sitting out there waiting to be used. That's the free energy. That's the massive amount of energy that you can use for whatever you want. Maybe you can pull it in, spin a couple of things, and make it warp space. I'm not saying you can't. And I'm not saying you can't pull it in, use zepto-octillions, whatever you need, watts, petajoules, and make a gravity wave. I don't see it yet. You guys, but think about even using this for that. Maybe there's something to that. In the meantime, we'll do this. Those tiny little things, in such large numbers and at such high speeds and in such small spaces, compound and add up. As anyone who's ever worked around nuclear energy, shout out to the Beaver Valley gang someday, or watched Oppenheimer twice in the theater, as I have, can tell you. It's just energy density. That's what you want. You want to do that. So in this case, what you do is do it. Did I mention it was free? Pardon me. I don't want to spit on it. So there is no excuse why anti-gravity, inertial mass reduction, cannot be achieved starting now with us. You're running out of excuses. Running out of time. The technologies are already out there, but they are unguided, unpurposed, ignored, forgotten, and or underpurposed. I am the big mouth that is here to get the ball rolling in the right direction by first focusing people. Focus people on intelligible. I hope you understand what the hell I'm saying. Feasible and achievable concepts, and then developing them. All right, winding down. Clear the plate. Take the photons out of the picture, the octillions, the petajoules, the floating in space. And think of the problem from, what do they say, 30,000 feet. Or in this case, it might be 80,000, dropping down in 0.2 seconds or whatever. How did they think of it? Well, maybe once upon a time, they were stuck with a difficult situation in life back on planet X. Stuck in the thrust stage. And they had to repeatedly reframe a problem. And it seemed to be going nowhere. Sometimes you will stumble upon a much easier solution than the ones you have been trying over and over and over and over and over to no avail. Sometimes it can be shockingly simple. Come on, folks, it's a balloon, jacked up balloon. As anyone who has ever tried unplugging it and then plugging it back in can attest. Did you try the jacked up balloon theory? This is one of those times. Normally, I would call myself a simpleton here and joke about how it takes a simpleton to find the simplest solution. But not this time. Instead, once again, I will assert that this light-pumping concept is the way to go now to make the most progress in the least time with the knowledge and resources we already have. Okay? This is the time and place, you see? Why do you think those peer groups are peering at us? Because they know someone's going to figure this out and do it. And so, they're checking, they're thinking, I don't blame them. Those are other theories. And I never saw a thing, and I don't know what to believe about that. But one can easily imagine the prevailing narrative, right, being right. I know that's what I would do if I were them. Yeah, sure. Because, we're going to figure this out, and we're going to do it. It's going to be dangerous. It's going to be dangerous for them, too. Us and them. But, that said, people should keep working on the warp drives, gravity generation, quantum inertia, whatever else. Okay, I'm not out here saying I'm the only one. I'm the only thing. You have to listen to me. You don't. I'm not. It isn't. But I'm Mr. Right Now, maybe. And that's just the base. I would assert that this, and undoubtedly the best path to pursue vigorously, yeah. And that is just the base reality for now. And it can only succeed, period, which is a good thing. This outcome will happen eventually anyway, Chinese balloon fans. With or without us here and now, you think I'm the only one thinking about this? What if I'm in a deep Russian lab and I'm way ahead of me? Ever think about that? Doesn't mean you owe me anything. But, get on a stick. And it can only succeed, period. This outcome will happen eventually anyway. Maybe it already did. With or without us here and now, this is the private sector coming in. Okay? It may look basic, and it is. But why not us, and why not now? You want your flippin' flying car? Oh, brother. Will you settle for floating? At the speed of light. Falling off my chair here. At the risk of sounding defensive. The logic behind this concept cannot be seriously questioned. The physics is already there. Anyone can see it. With the energy levels and phases, it is what it is. So you can either accept that and start working toward the future or not. The math is mostly there and things become pretty obvious when considering the undeniable effectiveness and the possibilities of cascading scales of time and photonic momentum. This reality is almost indisputable, despite the fact that this concept is perhaps lacking its best and most concise description with mathematical symbols. See how I acknowledge the weaknesses here? So you don't have to point them out repeatedly. Perhaps ironically, the engineering and fabrication technologies are both further along than those aspects. Don't have to pull my little piece of graphene aerogel out here and wave it around again. Because it's right here. Imagine what's in some lab in China. Perhaps ironically, the engineering and fabrication technologies are both further along than those aspects. Because there are people unknowingly doing bits and pieces of this work all around the world right now in academic laboratories and fledgling industries. The basic materials for a lot of this are already out there, but their use has not been correctly purposed, let alone optimized. It is up to us in this tinfoil hat affinity group, UFO, Twitter, etc. and so forth, to start to make that happen. Science by social media. Unless you want to sit around and wait for 9 Leon Panettas to tell you what an aerogel is. What a joke. So now it is your turn out there. I will gladly take questions now. I will look. Or anytime on X, formerly known as Twitter, or in my YouTube and Rumble channel comments. Like, share, subscribe, where other people might benefit from our interaction. Additionally, I plan on doing more shows like this. Hot air. Hot air propelled me right there. Perhaps joining a few subject matter groups and further expanding my small YouTube and Rumble channels until all this becomes painfully obvious. After 10 years, I might do a Twitter space. I can do that at the same time as this, but I can only stream on one thing at once with my system here. But in the future, I will try to live up to my aspirations. Rumble channels, after 10 years, I consistently bore myself by thinking about this too much, as it can get repetitive and tedious. But I never get tired of discussing it rarely, and the future is wide open in the meantime. And thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. Jeremy, Tim, Bernie, your name here, listeners and YouTubers, and Rumblers. And I am ready for questions, but first, I'm going to catch my breath, gather my thoughts, and and have a sip of coffee, put myself on the screen, put the music on. Well, no, there might be a question. Let's see. Shall we? That's not the questions. No questions there. Some comments on Twitter, but not questions regarding this, which is fine. That'll come in the future. See, when you're ahead of your time, you have the benefit of being there, and you can answer them later. So what? Now what are we gonna do? We're gonna outro. That's what we're gonna do. 2 songs, Look Both Ways, by Nathan Moore, and On My Skateboard by the Mini Vandals. So, you don't need to look at that anymore. You're going to hear... Put the music on. Don't just look at it. Play it. Play it. This thing takes forever to change. YouTube, too fast, except on this.